Hello and welcome to our webinar. Glad to have you with us today. This webinar is about cross-platform and one code for all devices. So what exactly do these mean with regards to Omnis Studio? But before I start, let's first have a short overview of the contents of this webinar. So what am I going to tell you this time? First of all, I will explain the terms cross-platform and one code for all devices in general and what advantages these features provide. Next, I will tell you which platforms Omnis Studio supports. And finally, I'll show you everything in a practical example. So what exactly does cross-platform and one code for all devices mean? The term cross-platform is used in software development for applications that can be used across different platforms. This means that these applications are available for more than one operating system. Examples of platforms are macOS, Windows, Linux, iOS, Android, and others. Cross-platform is especially important to cater to a larger number of users, since we're not limited to one operating system and thus one group of users. Now to one code for all devices. What does that mean again? Well, it's more or less self-explanatory, isn't it? It means that the same application code can run on multiple devices. Regarding Omnis Studio, this means that we don't have to develop different libraries, code, applications to provide a single application on different platforms. You only need to develop one application without platform-specific code, and you can offer it on all platforms supported by Omnis Studio. The advantages should be clear. You can save time and developer resources, get to market faster, and can exploit the full market potential of your app. Omnis Studio platform support. Now, we've talked for a while, so which platforms does Omnis Studio support? Well, on desktops, both Windows and macOS are supported. Windows and macOS plus Linux are supported on servers. Omnis also offers a wrapper. This allows you to build mobile applications for both iOS and Android. In addition, there is the Omnis Studio web client, which of course runs in every modern browser, regardless of the operating system. And the development environment is currently available for Windows and macOS. In a practical example, I will show you how easy it is to create a cross-platform application with Omnis Studio. For this purpose, we will adapt the layout breakpoints of our webinar library. If you're not familiar with this library, that's not a problem. If you are interested in how I created it, please watch our introduction webinar. So we will test the application on different platforms, including iOS. Okay, let's get started. I already opened Omnis Studio and the webinar.lbs library from our previous webinar. First, we will adjust the design and the so-called layout breakpoints of the remote forms. To do this, I will open the remote form that I want to edit. In this case, I want to edit the form JS Input. So I double-click on the form JS Input. Now we can see the form, but in the 768 design layout. So we can see how the design of the form looks when the client has a window width of more than 768 pixels. We can see this from the bar above the form. Here we see all the layout breakpoints that exist for the form. A layout breakpoint is the point, measured across the width of the window, at which the form layout changes or can change its appearance. The background of layout breakpoints is as follows. There are many different sizes of monitors, screens, and devices. For example, a mobile phone and a desktop PC. Also, you can drag the browser as wide or narrow as you like. To ensure that the content is always clearly visible, there are so-called layout breakpoints. And with these breakpoints, it is possible to create different layouts for different display sizes. By default, for remote forms, there are two layout breakpoints already predefined, namely the 320 and the 768. The 320 breakpoint is intended for the mobile view, and the 768 for the desktop view. Using the plus symbol on the left in the bar, I can add another breakpoint. In this example, I will create one for a width of more than 1024 pixels. So now I enter 1024 here and press OK. It is also possible to modify an existing layout breakpoint, either by double-clicking on the number in the bar or by dragging the tab. So I'll set this back to 768 for now. To make sure we can see the difference between the breakpoints, I will change the layout of the individual layout breakpoints. Here in the 768 breakpoint, I can place the objects next to each other because the user is using a wide window, so there is enough space for the objects next to each other. In the 1024 breakpoint, there is even more space, so I can leave some space between the two objects. And in the 320 breakpoint, I can leave the objects on top of each other because the user has hardly any space for this width. Now let's test this. To do this, as you may know, use the key combination Command+T or on Windows Control+T. If I now drag the browser window to make it smaller or larger, we see that the browser cycles through the individual layout breakpoints. Besides layout breakpoints, there is another option to let the shape of an object react to the size of the window. These are the so-called edge floats. Before I tell you more about these, let's go back to the design editor and take a closer look. To assign an edge float property to an object, I must first select the desired object, in this case, the button. Now I need to go to the Property Manager and there to the Appearance tab at the top. Here we can see the property edge float. Currently, KEF None is selected, but we're going to change that. So I need to open the list to pick a new value. I won't explain all of them that are listed here, but only a few. It is important to note that the edge floats are only valid for the current layout. I now assign the value KEF Left Right to the button and the value KEF Top Bottom to the edit control. Now I need to edit the edge floats in the 1024 layout. To do this, I simply click on the 1024 tab in the bar. Here I can assign the value KEF Right to the button and KEF Bottom to the edit control. Now let's test the form. We can already see how the controls behave. In the layout 768, the objects move according to the window size. These are the edge float controls, KEF Left Right, and KEF Top Bottom. And in the 1024 layout, the size of the objects change depending on the window size. These are the specifications, KEF Right and KEF Bottom. So well done, we just made this application responsive. And the app is ready for cross-platform. We just have to activate it. Oh, wait a minute, we don't need to, because the application is cross-platform from the start. Okay then, let's take a look at the app on a Windows computer. To start the application in the browser, I just need to enter the address of the Mac with the appropriate port and the details of the form. So, Windows works. I've also installed the library here on Windows. I can open it with the Omnis Studio IDE. Ta-da! There's our library, and I can test our form here just like on the Mac without having to change anything. And finally, let's take a look at the form on my smartphone. To do this, I have loaded the library we modified onto my iPhone using the Omnis wrapper. I won't explain the details of the process in this webinar. If you would like more information on the wrappers, please take a look at the technical note using the link displayed here. So then I'll open it. Hey, here's our app. In this case, I'll display the form JS input. Alternatively, we could also use the browser on the smartphone or use the Omnis Apps Manager app to access the web apps. However, I wanted to show it to you as a standalone mobile app, which I think is more cool. So we have created our own mobile app. So, we have learned what cross-platform and one code for all devices mean with regards to Omnis Studio. We examined the layout breakpoints and briefly talked about the edge float property. And we looked at our webinar library on various devices, including a smartphone. But what are the advantages? Well, cross-platform and one code for all devices save time and developer resources. Saving time is great, but this also means I can get my app to the market faster. And by addressing several user groups, thanks to cross-platform, I have a greater market potential. And maintenance of my application is much easier because I don't have to edit several libraries, just the one. I don't know about you, but I'm dying to make my own app. Glad you made it. See you next time.